All right, what's up, everybody? We're gonna jump in here. I'm gonna add in our friends over there on Facebook and on Twitter here in just a moment, and we're gonna get started. Just a couple minutes late. Sorry about that. We'll be going here in just a moment. All right. All right, and we are live, and the Atlanta Falcons have a brand new head coach. Welcome into the Falcons podcast. Looks like we have the wrong branding underneath the bottom. Didn't even realize that was there. Sorry, give me 1 second. That's not right. Okay, well, there you go. We got the right podcast set up right now. Sorry about that. We've got a little bit of a little whatever. But no, look, Kevin Stefanski, he's the new head coach here of the Atlanta Falcons. Welcome in. My name is Garrett Chapman. We got a lot to get into here on the show today. So apologies again. We're trying to get a handle on everything. We've got another big potential candidate who just got his name thrown into the mix. We'll talk a little bit about him just as I kind of dig into a little bit more of kind of what he's got going on. But we're going to discuss the decision to hire Kevin Stefanski. And that's going to be the biggest plot point, I guess, of today. I'm going to take your discussion points. If you have any questions, anything else like that, I'm more than happy to dig into that. We're also going to talk about what is to come after the fact. Of course, you have the Kevin Stefanski hire. You have Jeff Ulbrich, who's been hired. You have Bill Callahan, who's been announced. But who's the general manager? Who's the offensive coordinator? What is going to be happening next? Shoot, defensive line coach, secondary, who knows? We got a lot to get into here on the podcast today. But I will take your questions. Make sure to drop them in there. Super chats are the best way to get your stuff right up to the top. I know in recent weeks we've had a lot of comments and a lot of questions. I don't expect that to be any different today because you guys are fantastic and you guys give such great questions and comments and everything else like that. And we will get to as many of those as we can today. But again, super chats, they are the best way to support me, support the podcast, and of course, to get your questions to the front of the line. We're going to start right here. OMT Studios says, ... Yay. I agree. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be awesome. I know your comment is dripping in sarcasm. I can just tell already. But look, I'm going to give you a reason that you should be excited about this deal. I think there is a lot of reason to be excited about Kevin Stefanski taking over as the new head coach here in Atlanta. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Mike Harvey, 2748 is a subscriber. Welcome to all of our subscribers as well. Depends on whether he gets the quarterback position right. That, of course, is the massive plot point that we got to get into. That's going to be something that we discuss all offseason. What does the quarterback position look like? What does it look like moving forward? And I think that's going to be a really important thing to talk about. And I mean, as of right now, it's Michael Penix, man. It's Michael Penix, but it could be somebody else who's in the fold as well. Could Kirk Cousins be coming back? He's going to get cut. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion, but wherever his next home ends up being, I think it's going to be the place that's going to offer him the most money, first and foremost. I mean, we all know Kirk Cousins wants to go make his money, and then look, power to him. He should want to go make his money. But he also wants to go to a place where he's going to have some security. He has some experience working with Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski was his offensive coordinator the first year that he was in Minnesota. They worked together really well. One of the better years that Kirk Cousins had in the NFL. Maybe that's going to give him a reason to want to come back to Atlanta and see what he can do. Plus, his wife's from here, and his family's been rooted here for the last 2 years. Maybe there's some value in staying and potentially making this his home moving forward. Maybe that works out in such a way that it can get him a deal. But ultimately, he's going to have Michael Penix breathing down his neck, and that's not going to change. So we'll see. There's the new regime. It also isn't tied to Michael Penix. And if they do want to keep Kirk Cousins and see what it looks like there, that's an option that could be on the table. It's not going to be a popular option. I've heard some people talk about Joe Flacco. I don't think Joe Flacco is really a good option personally. Joe Flacco just got benched this season by Kevin Stefanski. I don't think that Joe Flacco's time in the NFL is going to be lasting much longer. That's just my opinion. So I would be admittedly pretty surprised to see him come to Atlanta, right? So as far as other options, I mean, Malik Willis is going to be an expensive one if you want to go spend a lot of money on a guy who probably is not going to come here because he wants to go start. He wants to go get his money, and he also wants to have the opportunity to start games. I don't think that's going to be here in Atlanta necessarily, but you never know. Could happen. If you want to go trade for a guy, whether that's Mac Jones or Jacoby Brissett, something like that, you can do that as well. So we've talked a lot about the quarterback position. It's going to be a big topic of conversation, Mike. So we'll dig into that as well. But unbeatable says afternoon, Garrett. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching this podcast, wherever you're going to enjoy this podcast over the next couple of however long we're on this podcast going today. But appreciate everybody, no matter where you get your podcast, you can get it right here. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to stick around because we do this every Tuesday and Thursday. But I got a super chat over here from Mike, and he's going to jump straight to the front of the line, as is tradition. Mike says Malik Willis is going to be a free agent. Carson Beck, projected 4th round. I think Carson Beck is an interesting option, but I do believe that the Falcons are going to want to go with a veteran. That's just kind of the way that I go with this. Carson Beck could theoretically be an option. He's going to get drafted. He's going to be a guy who plays in the NFL and potentially has a couple of starts and over his career. I think ultimately the Falcons go with a veteran guy. I just think you want to have somebody who's going to come in here and help Michael Penix develop a little bit. Maybe he can take over the reins and kind of an established backup quarterback, if you will, Mike. I think that's probably the best case scenario for the Falcons. If they have to draft a quarterback, Carson Beck is not the worst option on the board. He's not going to be a guy who I believe is going to come in and take things over and steal the show necessarily, but he's also not necessarily going to lose you games. I don't know how he projects as a professional. I watched a lot of his games when he was at Georgia, and I watched several more when he was at Miami. He showed flashes, but he also showed the ability to turn the ball over in bunches, and that interception that he had last night in the national championship game to end the game was sort of the personification of his career. He flattens out a pass that he should know better, and he throws the interception and Miami loses. It looked like he was going to be wide open and then it just didn't come together and whatever. But point is, Carson Beck is an option. I don't think he's the option. I certainly don't think he's the best one. But I appreciate the comment. Appreciate the idea, Mike. And Malik, I just think he's going to go somewhere like New York or Cleveland or somewhere like that has a glaring need at the quarterback position, who is not going to have somebody who's there and able to start for them, if that makes any sense. Like I mentioned, another super chat here from Trenton, Houston. Big thank you for the super chat. We're going to go straight to you. The new era is here. Don't silence me. This isn't your daddy's Falcons. All right. Word. I love the excitement. I love that. No one's going to silence you here. I highlight comments that I disagree with all the time. I don't, just because I see them doesn't mean I agree with them. Just because I flash them up on the screen doesn't mean I agree with them either. But I do think that this is a really good Falcons move. And honestly, I'll tell you why. Thank you for the comments, Trenton and Mike. But the Falcons went all in on this hire. The Falcons were clearly all in on this. They got left at the altar with John Harbaugh. I heard some reports that they were kind of moving on just at the same time that Harbaugh was moving on. And I heard some people said that the interview didn't go well. I don't know how much truth there is to that. We'll never know, really. But I do know that they knew that Kevin Stefanski was a fantastic option there for them. Kevin Stefanski was clearly their number 2. And they knew that they weren't going to get left behind for this one. And they made sure of it. They pushed to the front of the line to make sure that they got him in on Saturday morning. They got him in before they had other people in for their first interviews. And they knew for a fact that this is going to be the guy who's going to lead their team forward. And they didn't let him leave. And you have Arthur Blank, who's cooking steaks. And they're having long meetings and everything at the Blank house. And I mean, I see the vision here because you have a rookie president of football ops in Matt Ryan. You're going to likely going to have a rookie general manager. So you want to get a veteran head coach who knows the ins and outs of coaching in this league and leading a team and building a roster. And I mean, he's been through some highs. He's been through some lows too. And I think he's learned from both of those things. And I think that makes him a better coach and it makes him more prepared for this team moving into 2026. And You saw when this team actually, and I say this team, I'm talking about Cleveland, when they actually had the pieces before the Deshaun Watson trade, it was pretty clear that he was one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, right? He was he went from, he took Cleveland, which all due respect to Cleveland, is they have great fans. They play hard, but that team just loses, dude. And that was a team who was 0-16, I think 2 years before he got there. And then like they'd won 2 games after that, and then they hire him, and then all of a sudden we're back in the playoffs, man. Look at this. And I'd say he overcame a lot. He really overcame a lot. And I do think that ultimately this is a terrific move by this team. Mike Harvey drops in another super chat. I'm going to go straight to you. We could get Daniel Jones, cheap backup. Daniel Jones is coming off of an Achilles injury, unfortunately, and that ended his season this year. Mike, it's a good suggestion. I think he was going to go make a bag somewhere this offseason, but it's probably not going to be in Atlanta. It's probably not going to be next season either. You know, it's the risky part of taking a 1-year deal. What happens if you get hurt? Well, you're seeing it. He got hurt, and he's probably not even going to land a contract next year. I would be a little surprised. He's probably going to rehab, and he's going to try and see what he can do after that. But it was so late in the year that he's not going to be ready to start games. Daniel Jones' injury timeline actually, I'd say, probably puts him behind Michael Penix. So I'm out on Daniel Jones. And it's not because I think he's a bad quarterback. It's just I don't think he's going to be ready. But Mike, appreciate the comment. But it's back to Stefanski. I mean, this is a guy he's 45-56 in 6 years in Cleveland, but he had the 2 playoff appearances in his first 4 years. And this is a franchise who, shoot, man, they didn't won a playoff game since 1994, dude. They'd been to the playoffs 3 times, and he represents 2/3 of those. They play in not really debatably the best division in football. I joked in a previous podcast and people got mad at me. I said that the AFC North is just the NFC South with a good PR team. I joked about that and people got upset, but it's mostly just because of the last couple of years. They just haven't really done all that much, but they've also had some really good years as well. And largely they've been the best division in football. And especially some of those years that Kevin Stefanski was there. And they became the best division in football because Kevin Stefanski was there, because the Bengals were finding their level of success, you know? And despite that fact, the Steelers were playing really good football. The Ravens had Lamar Jackson, and the Browns were right there in the thick of it. You know, I mean, I pull up their record going back the last couple of years. 2015, 3-13, 2016, 1-15, 0-16 and 17 to 7-8. Last year of Jackson, they were 7-8. Freddie Kitchens comes in there. He goes 6-10. They fired him immediately. And then you flip around and drop in Stefanski. They go 11-5. They go straight to the playoffs. Like, let's not mess this around. I understand the images that people have been posting on social media. 8-26 his last 2 years. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. He's terrible. He's a loser. Blah blah blah. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous sentiment. And the tenure itself was marred by the worst trade in NFL history. A trade that was fundamentally driven by ownership. They talked about it. They confirmed that report earlier this year. And then they still fired Stefanski. Like, there's a reason people lined up for this guy. I mean, this guy worked wonders for most of his tenure in Cleveland before it all collapsed 2 years ago. And it's because the quarterback position went south. You know, since 2022, when they made the trade to bring in Deshaun Watson. Let's count together. You have Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett. You got Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, PJ Walker, Jeff Driscoll, and Bailey Zappi. That's 10 quarterbacks. 10 quarterbacks. And most of them are not very good. You know, and look, I love Jacoby Brissett. He's on my short list of players I'd want to bring in. That was actually one of the better years there for for Stefanski up there in Cleveland, right? I'm trying to go back through. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett led them in 2022 after he comes in and Mayfield got hurt. And, I mean, had a pretty good season. He was okay. Like, he wasn't a world guy. But ultimately, it's just Joe Flacco, a 40-year-old Joe Flacco. I mean, the guy, when he had him, what was he? He became the first player in Browns history to throw for 300 plus yards in 4 straight games. He did it with Joe Flacco, right? Jameis Winston, another journeyman, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, 2 rookies who just, I don't think are very good. You know, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, not very good. PJ Walker, no good. Driscoll, no good. Zappy, no good. And for people to lump the success that a coach has when they have those guys, I mean, give me a break, man. Like, you gotta give me a break with some of those guys. And look, he's going to come to Atlanta. He's going to inherit some issues. They do have problems under center. How is Michael Penix going to literally adjust to life under center? That's going to be an interesting adjustment here for Michael Penix because he plays out of the pistol. We saw Deshaun Watson struggled like a lot when they started asking him to go under center a little bit. He spent most of his career in shotgun. Okay, so is that a precursor to potentially a shortcoming that the Falcons have? Maybe it's something to consider because this is not something that I'm just going to go here and glaze the whole situation. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to push back on what a lot of people are poo-pooing on this deal. Because 2 disastrous seasons should not overshadow 4 seasons of surpassing expectations and being competitive in an ultra tough division in difficult circumstances. That's just the reality of life as a Cleveland Browns head coach, right? And I mean, this is a guy who really competes at a high level. He'll get this Atlanta Falcons team competing at a high level. And I'm going to go to your comments here in a little bit. I see some of them are flowing. And make sure, drop your comments in. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can here in a little bit, and then we're going to talk about what's next. But as far as what the Falcons can look like under him, I mean, who in the world is more excited than Bijan Robinson? I mean, this is a guy who, and Stefanski, that built a strong identity with that punishing run game. You had a great offensive line. You had several All-Pros that he coached up. And Bill Callahan, who was the offensive line coach in Cleveland before he went to Tennessee to coach for his son, who was the Brian Callahan, who took over as a head coach there. I mean, Bill Callahan had that unit coached up, ready to roll. That was the first offensive staffer that he added was Bill Callahan, and for good reason. That's a damn good coach, and it's a high run rate. And I think that the more I've looked into this, and that's one of the beautiful things. I didn't want to jump in and immediately do a video. I thought about doing it. Scott did it. He did a great job. I enjoyed watching his commentary. I wanted to give myself a chance to stew on this a little bit and kind of sit with it because I was lukewarm at first. I was a little lukewarm. He was on my short list, but I was lukewarm. You know, and the more that I dig into this, the more I realize that I think the Falcons made the right decision. And moving forward, I think that it does open the ability for them to potentially look into getting Tyler Algier to stick around because I do think there's going to be a high run rate here in Atlanta, very similar to what we saw with Arthur Smith and kind of with the tight ends too. He loves his tight ends just like Arthur Smith did. But I do think that there's a chance that they look into it. He's going to prove to be too expensive and go get your money. Seriously, go get your money. I'm excited for Tyler Algier. He's earned every penny of it. But the Falcons, I do believe they are going to go draft a running back. There should be plenty of them available. There should be some great ones coming up in this draft. We'll dig into that a little bit the deeper we get into the offseason. But I'm excited for what this rushing attack can look like. I am excited for that fact. And if he looks like that with Nick Chubb, who's a damn good player, imagine what he could look like with, a guy who's literally Kareem Hunt plus Nick Chubb, a combination of those two. And that's who Bijan Robinson is. The Browns finished top 5 in rushing yards per game from 2020 to 2022. And that's what happens when the personnel group is cohesive. And Stefanski's teams, they dominate on the ground. Now you get Bijan Robinson. And I think that really opens up some potential. But as far as I've heard, so the comparisons to the Arthur Smith offense and that regime that was here in Atlanta, I saw some of that. And I also saw some people taking it a step further and saying, "Whoa, well, that means Kyle Pitts is coming back." I still am out. I'm out on Kyle Pitts. I think you can go find a decent tight end in free agency that's not going to cost you $15 million. I think you can go find a good tight end with some upside in the third round or in the fourth round of the draft coming up this spring. I think that doing that, you draft one and sign one, and Charlie Warner is going to be here. That gives you three really good options. I'd expect that's going to be the situation that they run, because they're going to run some multi-tight end sets, and that is kind of what I would expect them to do. I don't think that they're going to spend $15 million on a luxury position like that. And I'm excited to see what that really looks like. But ultimately, the conclusion is this, folks. It's Atlanta's starving for a winner. 8 years is a long time. A long, long time to go without a winning record, right? And I know the headline of this program is did Kevin Stefanski make the Falcons the NFC South favorite? My answer is yes. I do think that that's the case. And I think that's also bigger than just Kevin Stefanski. I think the fact that you have a lot of questions in the other three markets in the NFC South, I think that is something that you have to keep in mind, right? I mean, I don't think that Tampa is going to be getting better anytime soon. I think they've peaked ultimately. Baker's a great quarterback. I'm really excited to see what I love Baker Mayfield just as a football fan. I like him a lot, but they got some questions and they're aging on defense. And I mean, how much longer is Mike Evans and Godwin and all these other guys going to be able to give you viable snaps and everything? I mean, look, they've got a good rushing attack. They're a good team, right? But Todd Bowles, I mean, he showed that he is a victim of who his offensive coordinator is. And I can't remember if they've officially hired a new offensive coordinator. I can't speak on that necessarily. But if it's a similar situation to what they find themselves in this year, I thought Todd Bowles was going to get fired this year. I really did. And if it doesn't happen, it didn't happen this year, so it might happen next year. And I just don't see the Buccaneers getting all that much better. And of course, we have a full offseason to talk about this. We have a long, long way to go. But I still think the New Orleans Saints are 2 years away, and I'm not a big believer in Tyler Shuck. I think he's a good player. I think he's a floor raiser, but he's not going to give you a high ceiling. And then Carolina, I mean, they won the division at 8-9, but I don't think Bryce Young is any closer to being a franchise quarterback than he was at the beginning of the season. It's a low bar, but I think Kevin Stefanski did elevate the Falcons, and I think that this is a slam dunk hire for them. The further I get along, the more I find myself thinking that this is a really, really, really good hire. And I mean, with the recent shortcomings of what Cleveland was in the last 2 years, I think that's kind of soured some Falcons fans on it. But this hire is going to bring elevated expectations to the Falcons. And I think that they're going to need to get off to a good start. And I think that this is one that, depending on that, I started this whole show on this discussion point, is how they figure out the quarterback position is going to go a very long way in the way that Kevin Stefanski is viewed after year one. I think that they've got a lot of options on the table there for the quarterback position, and we don't even know who the general manager is yet. But I think they move on from Kyle. I think they go get another wide receiver and add him to the room and see if Darnell Mooney can kind of rediscover some of his luster that he picked up his first year here. Kirk Cousins is going to be moved off the roster. It opens up a lot of cap flexibility. And I think that you're going to figure out the center position with Bill Callahan coming in here. I think that's going to be a spot that you may have to upgrade in just because of fit. I don't think that Ryan Newsel is going to fit this new scheme too much because it's more of a gap scheme, less of a zone run scheme, which, I mean, the wide zone, he runs it. He ran it with the Kubiak system, but he does run some of that gap stuff. So I wonder if you do see the Falcons potentially upgrade at center. But ultimately, this team has some needs, but I think there's something that they can figure out, and if they can draft well, if they can make the right decisions, this team should be elevated and they should be getting back I would expect them to be making a run at the postseason and kind of being in that 9-10 win range. Again, kind of renewing some of those expectations that we had for the Falcons heading into the season. This is not a Super Bowl team. I still don't think that that's the case. But maybe those perceptions can change pretty quickly because new coaches, new locations, new teams, things like that. I think that has a big impact on teams and the immediate success that teams have. I'm not going to say they're going to come in here and be Liam Cohen. I'm not going to say that he's going to come in here and be getting this team to right back up on top, just like he did in, 2019 or so, 2020, his first season in Cleveland. I'm not even going to say that, but I do think that he's elevated the Falcons and got the Falcons into a good contending spot. All right, I'm going to dig into some of these comments. I know some of those have been rolling in, and I do want to get to some of these before I discuss what's coming next. If you have something, if you want to mention it, drop it into the comments, and I'm going to try to get to as much as I can. The Bryce Souls Wrong on YouTube says, Big Brain Brian Callahan gets the OC job to work with his dad. That's actually one of my next big plot points here for the Falcons moving into the next couple of weeks, and I think that's going to be one. And I want to get this guy's name right. Big congratulations. Andrew Jones was just named to the Hall of Fame. I love that. That actually makes me so happy. That's big time. That's awesome. It's not Falcons related, but it's Atlanta related. So shout out to Andrew Jones. He's one of my all-time favorites. One of my he's great. But so the Falcons, according to Ian Rappaport, they interviewed Arizona Cardinals passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach Drew Terrell for their offensive coordinator today. He was with the Chargers at OC and Commanders previously. So it's a guy who's getting some attention. He's getting some looks there at the offensive coordinator spot. I don't have him on my list. I might look into him a little bit more. I might do a little hot board of potential candidates that the Falcons may consider. That might be a good one. But as far as Brian Callahan goes, I mean, I can dive into this really quickly. He's 41 years old, just got his first opportunity to be a head coach in Tennessee. He's, like you mentioned, Bryce. Bryce is wrong. He says, he is the son of Bill Callahan, who's now the offensive line coach, who was with Stefanski in Cleveland. So that's kind of your connection there. But when Brian was with the Bengals, he was their offensive coordinator for 4 years before going down to Tennessee in 2024. And that obviously didn't work out. He was 4-19 over his career, but that doesn't mean he's a bad play caller, right? Callahan's Bengals offenses, when you had Joe Burrow there over his final 3 years, they're 19th in the league in scoring, 22nd in offensive EPA. But their ceiling, man, when they were playing really good ball, that was a team who was going and played in Super Bowls. And I'd say Callahan's offense has had a lot to do with that. But he's on that list. He's on my short list. I think he's my second option here for the Falcons, just based off the things that I've been hearing. Tommy Rees is going to be the favorite. He's the prohibitive favorite for the job right now. It's kind of the direction that I would expect the Falcons to go, just because you would have some familiarity with him. And just as far as Rees goes, I mean, he's still 33, which is kind of wild to say, but I mean, he's bounced around a little bit. He spent the last 2 seasons with the Browns. He was the tight ends coach and passing game specialist. Excuse me. He did that in 2024. Then he was promoted to offensive coordinator last year. And something that we've seen from Stefanski, we talk about some of his shortcomings. He really wants to call plays. He really, really wants to call plays. And he was a former offensive coordinator in 2019, called plays for the Browns for the bulk of his time in Cleveland. But he did turn over the play calling duties to Ken Dorsey in 2024, halfway through the season, and Tommy Rees halfway through the season last year. So maybe he comes in and rethinks if he wants to call plays, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I'd expect that he's going to come in here and want to call plays. A lot more talent to work with here in Atlanta, and I think that's just sort of his DNA. That's just what he wants to do. And I mean, Rees, he was OC at Bama. He was OC at Notre Dame for 3 years, which is wild because he's 33 years old. So he was doing all this when he was in his late 20s, which is nuts to think about. But he won the SEC championship with the Crimson Tide in 2023, his one season there, before heading back up to the NFL ranks, where he took over in Cleveland. Those are your top 2 options at offensive coordinator, just to answer your question, Bryce. that's probably the direction that the Falcons are going to go. And when you look at Mike McDaniel, I mean, he's a name that I just don't see a fit. Not because he's not a great coordinator, not because he would do wonders in Atlanta. It's just because Stefanski wants to call plays. And Mike McDaniel, assuming he doesn't get a head coaching gig, he's going to want to call plays. And he's going to be a hot commodity. And I just saw he was out there in Los Angeles. He's interviewing with the Chargers. He was up in Pittsburgh, I believe. He was in Baltimore. I mean, he's been all over the place, and somebody is going to throw a bag at him because I think Tennessee might be a great option for him as well. But he's a candidate for head coaching jobs. He's not going to go to a place where he's going to be offensive coordinator and not call plays. It's just not going to be the case. As tempting as it is to think about the run game designs that he would put together for Bijan Robinson, oh my God, that'd be fantastic. But I just don't see that one happening. Brian Dable's another one. There's no professional connection to Stefanski, but I mean, he's bounced around a lot. I'm sure their circles would cross over at various points and somewhere at some point. But he helped develop Josh Allen. You know, the early years of Josh Allen, early years in Buffalo made him a good fit potentially for Michael Penix, who's entering his third professional season. I think the ability that Daboll has to develop a young quarterback, I think that's going to be something to look at. But again, I could see him also going to Tennessee to go match up with Cam Ward and Robert Saleh, and I think that would be a fantastic matchup, Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel. But one that I saw, and this one came from Josh Kendall in The Athletic, Antoine Randall L., 46 years old. He's a bit of a wild card, according to Josh Kendall. He's the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach for the Bears. He's never run an offense before. He's one that I could see potentially looking to get an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator without maybe calling plays. But he's a wide receivers coach. He coaches those guys up. He did a good job in Detroit. He was the offensive coordinator and passing game coordinator when Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator and passing game coordinator, and Randall L. was the wide receivers coach in Detroit. But those are your options, I'd say, for offensive coordinator. But I'm coming to the conclusion I need to do a hot board. So keep an eye out for that. Give me a follow at GChatPTL. I'll probably do that tomorrow morning or at some point in the next day or so. And then I'll tweet that out. I'll make sure that everyone has a look at that, just because I think that's going to be an important thing to keep an eye on. Who's the next big domino is going to be offensive coordinator, I would imagine. As far as special teams coordinator goes, Bubba Ventrone, he was the special teams coordinator for Stefanski in Cleveland. They were a well-coached unit. I mean, they led the NFL in special teams EPA in 23 and in 2024, but they saw the dip this season. Probably has something to do with the fact that the team just wasn't very good. But I imagine that's going to be an option. That's going to be a less scrutinized option. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on that one. All right, I see we got a bunch of comments. I'm going to try to get to as many of these as I can. If you have something that you immediately want to get to the top, remember, super chats are the best way to do that. Happy Hudson over there on YouTube says, how does the Stefanski hire affect what we do with Cousins? That's an interesting one, Happy Hudson. And one that I think there is a chance that he is retained. He'll be cut. He's going to get cut one way or the other, just because the salary is untenable. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be here on the current contract. But there is the unorthodox potential of him getting cut and then re-signing. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. Crazy things happen in this league, but I think Kirk Cousins wants to go somewhere where he's going to be the clear starter come week 1 and then again in week 18 all the way through. That's what I would imagine is going to happen with Kirk Cousins, and I don't think that that's going to be the case here in Atlanta. He's going to have Michael Penix breathing down his neck, and that's not going to be something that I think he's going to be interested in doing. I also don't think that the Falcons are going to offer him the security that he wants, both in years and dollar amounts. I think that's going to be just not going to work out. But he did play with Stefanski. Kirk Cousins did, and he had some really good years with Kevin Stefanski. So maybe there's something to it, but we'll see. Bryce is wrong says it was meh about the hire at first, but the staff choices are making me optimistic. I appreciate your optimism, and I appreciate the fact that Kevin Stefanski decided to retain Jeff Ulbrich. I think that was a tremendous decision. The fact that they did that is a step in the right direction. You know, I mean, it's going to be the first time that the Falcons have had a defensive coordinator in consecutive years, and since 2021, right? When Dean Pease was the defensive coordinator the first year of the Smith regime. I mean, my God, man, it's been a long time. It's been a while here for this Falcons organization. But I mean, if it's anybody's going to do it, it's Jeff Ulbrich, man. I mean, he had a fantastic year, and Falcons finished 57 with 57 sacks, which of course is the new franchise record. They're 15th in total defense. They're 19th in scoring defense. They were 15th in expected points added per play. But they did it with youth. They did it with young cats on this team. And I would imagine progress is not always up, right? You don't always take that next step, and it's better and better and better, one step better every time. And it's not how it works sometimes. And so I'm not saying that the Falcons are just automatically going to get better next year, but I think he does give you a good floor. I think when the team was healthy, they showed you that they are capable of being a top 10 unit in the NFL. Because baked into the numbers that I just read you are the five games where Divine Diablo didn't play. And there was a clear drop-off when Divine Diablo wasn't playing games. A clear drop-off when Divine Diablo wasn't playing. And the Falcons still held on. You know, I mean, J.D. Bertrand got a lot of run, and I don't think he was J.D. Bertrand hit a tough season. But Ronnie Harrison comes in and he plays admirably, and he helps elevate the floor of that defense and what they could do last year. But Divine Diablo represented the ceiling. And the way that Jeff Ulbrich was able to put all those pieces together, he's one of the reasons that they drafted James Pierce and Jalen Walker and Xavier Watts. I mean, he pounded the table for those guys reportedly. And that's who the Falcons went and got. And hey, credit to him. I'm just thrilled that Jeff Ulbrich's going to be coming back. And I think that the defense is going to be a linchpin for this team moving forward. And I'm excited for that. I know Jim Schwartz was rumored to be potentially an option for the Falcons, who was defensive coordinator for the Browns over the last couple of years with Stefanski, but he's also getting some look at to potentially be their head coach. We'll see on that one, but yeah, we shall see. Jeremy Ryan comes in here and says, trade Bijan for 2 firsts and trade up to draft Ty Simpson. You're not going to get 2 first-round picks probably for Bijan Robinson. I don't know what you would get for Bijan. I mean, maybe you would get 2 first-round picks. I have no idea. Trade value on players is so wild to me because it changes constantly. Falcons aren't trading Bijan Robinson. I just don't see that happening. He's the face of the franchise, and I don't see them doing that to get up into the first round. And which team? I mean, Ty Simpson's potentially a top 5 quarterback too. So Bijan Robinson is not going to be enough for somebody to trade away a top 5 pick. He's probably not. I don't think that anybody would do that because those are generally not teams who are running back away from competing at a high level. The team you'd get a 2 first-round picks for or from would be like I don't know, an Eagles team or a team who feels like they're really close, and obviously not the Eagles because they have Saquon, but you get the idea. It's going to be one of those top flight teams who feels like if you add a Bijan Robinson, then all of a sudden you're right there in the mix. Okay. Like you're not going to do that if you're the Tennessee Titans, you know, that's not going to be something that you're going to do. But Ty Simpson, again, he's a fine player. I don't see him slipping out of the first round. So it's going to be interesting where everything falls. And I haven't seen him in recent mocks. And again, I see Halsey dropped in that Shedeur Sanders was projected number 1. I don't care about Shedeur Sanders. Just for the record, everybody, I don't care about Shedeur Sanders. I don't want to talk about Shedeur Sanders. But mock drafts are often not accurate. You know, they're an estimation based off of what people have heard and what people have seen and everything else. And I don't know where Ty Simpson is going to fall is the point of what I'm trying to say. Happy Hudson said Marcus Mariota would be a good fit and not threaten Penix. I would agree, but Marcus Mariota is not going to be accepted by this fan base. Marcus Mariota is not coming back to Atlanta. I don't think Arthur Blank would like that very much. He quit on the team. I don't think that that's going to be the case. Halsey said, Falcons shouldn't need a veteran to help Penix. They need a backup who might start lots of games. That's what I was saying too, Halsey. They need a backup who can do both. In a perfect world, that's going to be the situation that they find themselves in. Terry Clark says, as of today, think the Falcons have the best staff in the South. Sans Tampa getting McDaniels as offensive coordinator. Wonder if Stefanski helps with Chubb and Njoku. If we lose Algier, Pitts, and free agent options. I don't know if Chubb's years might be behind him. I don't think that he's going to come in and provide a lot to the Falcons necessarily. I think it's just he's had a lot of wear and tear on that body, and I think it's about time for him. It's kind of coming to be that time for him. Njoku is kind of an interesting option. I think if you can get him on an affordable contract, I think that would make some sense. Because I think Algier's gone. I do think Pitts is gone as well. And those two might be affordable. So it's not, honestly, Terry, it's not the worst idea. I'd like the team to draft a running back with like a 6th-round pick, or maybe they don't have a 6th-round pick, but a 7th-round pick maybe, or a 5th-round pick, and see what you can find in the draft. I think that's the better position for both of those, really. Get a tight end in the 4th and a running back in the 5th. I think that would be an interesting way of approaching it, just to kind of flesh out the roster just a little bit more. Upstate Josh says probably getting Mac Jones on the cheap. Depends on what cheap is. I would say if you can get him for a 7th-round pick, that would be fantastic. I don't know if they would go for a 7th-round pick. Maybe they would. But I think ultimately if you can get a Mac Jones would be fantastic. I think Mac Jones would be very, very good. And he's a former top 10 quarterback. I mean, he's played a lot of games in the NFL. He had a good season last year. And when he played in limited duty, I think Mac would be a good option. But it just depends on what he would cost. 10 Cam says, how is Stefanski's track record in the draft? I guess Cleveland's ownership had a bit more power on those decisions. I can't speak on the draft. I don't know what his impact was in the NFL draft. I can't speak on it, and I can't answer that in an educated way. I would be making a guess, and I don't want to guess. But I appreciate the question. It's a good question. Edward says, are both of Michael's knees done or done for? No. No. I mean, I don't think that is no, I don't think they are done for necessarily. I mean, he had a successful surgery. He's moving forward with everything else. And look, the wonders of modern medicine say that he should be back in starting games for the Falcons. We'll see. But again, is that maybe he continues to get hurt? I mean, but the new staff is not going to be married. The new regime, if you will, is not going to be married to Michael Penix. If he can't stay healthy, and if he cannot play a full 17 games, then he's not going to have a very long NFL career. That's just the reality. You have to stay healthy. The best ability is availability. Maybe Bill Parcells said that. Somebody said that. But it's the best ability for a good reason. You're not worth anything if you can't play. Injuries have piled up on him in recent years, but we'll see what he can actually do if he can stay healthy. Trenton says, when you sacrifice $200 million and 3 consecutive first-round picks, you end up in quarterback hell, exactly where Stefanski was. He's blessed to get out of that revolving media circus. Yeah, I mean, it's the worst trade in NFL history. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The worst trade in NFL history. Deshaun Watson was an unmitigated disaster. Off-field issues aside, he was a disaster. I mean, you talk about a guy who can't stay healthy and then doesn't rehab properly and had gotten the spats with everybody. And I mean, he was a disaster in Cleveland. And that was a Cleveland team who really and truly believed that they were a quarterback away. And that's why they dumped Baker Mayfield. Again, a ownership decision, and it's because Baker tried to play through an injury and they kind of killed him for it, and then now it's just a disaster in Cleveland. And there's a reason people lined up out the door to try and get Kevin Stefanski into their building. But no, to your point, I mean, when you burn that much money in a fully guaranteed contract, oh my God. Xavier Littman, Grady baby for life. Hits with the red and black. What's up, man? Mike Harvey says salary cap on Tyler. Are you saying throw the salary cap to Tyler, or are you saying he's going to be a cap casualty, so you can't get him? I'm not sure what you're saying, but I don't think that Tyler Algier is going to be here because somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. And someone's going to pay him starting running back money, and good for him. 10 Cam 01 says, I think we need to trade Pitts and Algier to get some more draft capital and trade down a few more picks. You can't trade Kyle Pitts or Tyler Algier. Neither is under contract with the Falcons for the 2026 season. So they are off the market when it comes to trades. And when trades open up would be in March when the league year starts, because we've passed the trade deadline. The trade deadline was back in November. So you can't trade anybody. It's unfortunately not, they're just free agents. They're going to walk. So the Falcons are going to end up with nothing if they sign elsewhere. Maybe a compensatory pick next year. We'll see. Happy Hudson 78 says, is Nathan Carter still under contract? Yes, he is. I know Algier has said he would like to return, but that man deserves a bag of money and a starting role. I agree. Yeah, I just said that. Algier definitely deserves to go get his contract. And Nathan Carter is under contract. He was the third running back on the roster. He was often a healthy scratch in games. He played a little bit in preseason. He played a little bit against, I believe, the Carolina Panthers in that early game. He had some fumbling issues at one point, but he did land on the roster. The undrafted free agent rookie, and I mean, he was fine. He mostly just played in practice squad stuff, and he wasn't on the practice squad, but he was mostly utilized in practices. Didn't really get a lot of snaps. I don't think that he's going to take over as RB2. Carlos Washington's another name to watch. He was on the practice squad. But there are some guys there. I do think that they draft a running back. I think that's going to be what they do. But there's a chance. Nathan Carter is on the roster though. Halsey, what you got? It says the term luxury is misused in football culture. NFL teams can't not have pass catchers, tight ends, and wideouts are necessary. Yeah, no, they absolutely are. But paying $15 million to a tight end who is not going to give you all that much more than, I don't know, a tight end who's going to be a $5 million tight end. He led you in receiving last year, yes. But at the same time, it depends on what Stefanski sees in him. And that's the thing. I love what we saw from Kyle Pitts down the stretch. I loved what we saw from him. And if you are confident that he can be that guy over a full 17 games, great. Then it's not a luxury. That's a necessity. You know, it's a luxury to pay for a great closer, right? In baseball. But they're not necessarily a necessity, you know, for a team who wants to go win at a big level. But at the same time, tight ends, wideouts, of course, they're necessary. They absolutely are necessary. But is Kyle Pitts necessary? It's not that tight ends aren't necessary. It's that Kyle Pitts might not be necessary. That's more the point that I was making. Terry comes back. Terry says a lot of college quarterbacks return for next season, even though in this upcoming draft, we don't have a first. The year after, when they all come out, we do. So take this year to build competition for that pick. The 2027 draft is going to be one of the best in recent memory. From what I have been reading and what I have been seeing and just covering college football in the way that I do, 2027 is going to be a jam-packed year. There's going to be a lot of talent. There's going to be a lot of talent. And I think if the Falcons put themselves in a decent position to draft well, you'll be able to find talent even if you start winning some games and you drop into the draft a little bit further. I think they're gonna get some good talent next year, but ultimately good teams have to be able to find talent no matter where they draft. So that's just my take there. 10 Cam looks like he's responding. He said, I hate to see Algier go to another team, but it seems like a win-win for both parties to separate, and then Nate Carter gets signed 3-year deal in 2025. Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent, still on the team. Rick says Stetson Bennett is going to be available. So Stetson Bennett has no NFL experience to speak of. I think if you get Stet, I know a lot of Georgia fans will be really excited and they'll buy his jersey and wear it to games, or probably wear it and sit on their couch at home. But I don't think that Stetson Bennett is a viable option for the Falcons. Maybe, but he is undersized. He has his shortcomings. There's a reason he is the third quarterback with the Rams. He's also had some off-field issues. He's had some other things that he's been working for. And if they bring Stetson Bennett, look, fine. It'd be good. Whatever. But I do think that there are going to be better options, more established options available, at least in the draft, whether in the draft or anywhere else. Carla says, how has your optimism for Stefanski changed in contrast to your support of Morris based on their records? I think that comparing coaches, like just mano a mano, record to record, is not an effective way to compare coaches. I think Raheem Morris is a fine coach. He had several shortcomings as a head coach with the Falcons, and expectations were to take on a bigger role in 2025, and he didn't. That's all I can react to as far as Raheem Morris goes. I would also say that the team is better in Atlanta than in Cleveland. They weren't paying a quarterback who could not play games for them as much money as they were fully guaranteed and everything else with Deshaun Watson. I think that there's just a lot of context that's necessary when you compare records. It's just like in college, not necessarily to the degree of college football, but it exists there. I mean, you are what your record says you are, and there is some truth to that in the NFL. And it has to be something that needs to be considered, and I believe it was. And it's a question that I feel like I probably need to ask next week, next Tuesday, when they are addressing the media for the first time. I think that needs to be a question that comes up is what gives? I mean, what's up with the record the last 2 years? But I do think that you have to weigh the entire body of work with Stefanski. With Raheem Morris, the entire body of work is not good. With Stefanski, the entire body of work is altogether pretty solid. You know, and he took a struggling, downtrodden franchise and turned them into a consistent team. And then bad decisions from ownership tanked it. And I think that there's reason to believe that was the case. Time will tell. Time will certainly tell. Zach Taylor, so Gabriel Rogers says Zach Taylor was play caller, not Callahan. You're right. But he was the offensive coordinator. That's all I was saying. It's a very important note. If I said play caller, I was incorrect, and I didn't mean to say that. No, he was. Zach Taylor was the play caller. Zach Taylor was the guy doing all that stuff, but he was the offensive coordinator, right? So potentially a similar situation here in Atlanta. Dirty Bird says Stefanski going to be calling plays to start. I would assume. I know he's given up play calling a couple of times. He continues and says, I feel like he just gives up play calling when the season is over or the offense has no hope due to quarterback play or roster issues, or maybe Scott is right and he just wanted to be fired. Yeah, well, Scott's going to come out with his bold take with that. But I mean, ultimately, I do think that there are a lot of reasons why a lot of that stuff happened. I'm not privy to all of it, but I know that the first time he gave up play calling duties, it's Deshaun Watson got hurt, the team was suffering, and they just needed a fresh look. And maybe he felt like he needed to give more love to the rest of the team. Maybe he needed to. I don't know the exact reasons. I know that it wasn't working out really well at first, and then it also, once you turned it over to somebody else, it also still didn't work out very well. I think that a lot of that had to do with poor roster construction. So Mike Harvey comes over and says projected draft pick 48. Oh, this is your mock draft. Okay. Chris Johnson, you got a cornerback. You have Jacole Lane from USC, Brian Parker, Jack Andreas. Diego Pavia. Okay. That'd be an interesting one. Make trades for extra picks. Everyone always wants to make trades. And I know that people, I know previous comment talked about it, so it's not just Mike. Everybody wants to make trades all the time. And what people fail to realize is that you need a dance partner to make a trade. You know, it's not just as simple as just saying, I want to make a trade, and then you just make the trade. I mean, this isn't one of those things on like you do Madden, you play Madden and force a trade. It's not a situation where you're on the Draft Network or whatever, one of those PFF or one of those sites, and you force the trades, right? Or you have 50 people who are calling you and saying, I want to trade this, and this, and this. It doesn't really work like that, and there are a lot of other factors and a lot of other things that are going on. Trades, they happen occasionally, but it's not always that simple. All right. 30 Birds continues, says, I'd be for Pavi in the 7th because why not? But he's such a D-bag. I'd pass. Diego Pavia is not, I mean, maybe he can come in and be a more, I don't know, Taysom Hill is the guy I was going to compare him to, but I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it without being off color about it, I guess you could say. He's the opposite end of the spectrum of Taysom Hill. Let's just put it that way. I'm not in on Diego Pavia. I think you have other needs that you need to address. Easton Stick can come in and be that option. I think ultimately you'll have Michael Penix, and then I don't think you draft. And I've said this before. I think that you're going to go get someone in free agency, and that's where you're going to make your decision. Des Foreman says, are too many teams willing to start Kirk? I'd imagine some will start Kirk. I'd imagine someone will. Someone will pay him. Browns might pay him. The Jets might pay him. But I don't know. We'll see. That's a TBD. Colin doubles down, says he wants Mac Jones. Leon hits me with a good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Carla B. Smith says, your bold statement that you don't care about Shedeur Sanders and you don't want to talk about him explains your support of Stefanski. This 2-time coach of the year knew how to coach and didn't coach consistently, will not log into this live if you can talk about everyone except. Carla, I appreciate your sentiment. And what I'm saying is not as much to do with Shedeur Sanders. It's more about the little clicky fanboy culty crowd that supports him, and it's weird the way that they follow him on social media and they promote him and do everything else. He's a 5th round draft pick. He's fine, and the fact that people were talking about him, Stefanski intentionally tanking him and turning whatever else. I was saying that they were going to put him in bad positions intentionally to make him fail. It was ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thought. And that's what I'm saying I'm not going to talk about. That's the stuff that I don't want to address because most of it is BS. Most of it is complete fallacy. And it's made up by fanboys who don't know what the hell they're talking about. He's not the quarterback of the Falcons. He was bad last year. He was bad. And ultimately, I don't root on people's downfalls or anything else like that. I just react to what I see, and he just wasn't very good. And some people get really upset by that. I don't care, Carla. That's all I'm saying. It is what it is. It is what it is. And I think that some of the reactions from it were just a little out of pocket and a little ridiculous. That's the stuff that I said I'm not going to address. It is an elephant in the room that he had a lot of quarterbacks. It's an elephant in the room. But I also think that that's as much a personnel issue as it is anything else. But it's more just outlandish comments that I don't want to get into. Dirty Bird says, it's insane how many people are calling Stefanski. Oh, yeah, I'm not. Again, this is more of the stuff that I don't want to get into. I'm not going to get too deep into that. Trenton says, G-Money, I asked you a few weeks ago. Now Kevin's here. Chance we cut re-sign Kirk percentage guess. I'd say it's pretty darn high. I'm going to say 95%. Now that you've restructured the contract, it's going to be pretty much a certainty in my eyes. That's the way I see it, at least. I think that it would have changed if they didn't restructure his contract and added so much of and changing all of his guarantees and base salaries and stuff like that. After all of those changes, it makes him a very clear-cut candidate, and it's just a foregone conclusion in my eyes. That's just the way I see it. Again, that doesn't mean he's not going to be the quarterback next year because they could re-sign him technically. I just don't think that that's going to be the case. I don't see them going in that direction, but they could re-sign him theoretically. Terry says Malik Willis could be a strong bridge option. Malik is not going to be a bridge. Malik has played his way into a starting job somewhere in the NFL. I believe that. I mean, he was somebody who was drafted on potential. He bounced around a little bit in the college ranks and then had a really great, I guess, finish with Liberty. Got drafted in the third round and bounced around a little bit. I mean, he had some opportunities to start, and I think he made himself some money, and he wants to go be a starter. I just don't think he's going to have that ability here in Atlanta because this team is tied up with Michael Penix at least a little bit. But again, I mean, we'll see. I do think that he's going to go. He's more of an answer for like the New York Jets or the Browns or something like that. But someone's going to throw a bag at him. Dirty Birds says any quarterback taken outside the first or second round are irrelevant. There's like 3. Okay, again, that's another Shedeur Sanders thing. Again, guys, I don't want to get into Shedeur Sanders. Like this is, and Carla, this is what I was talking about because people make comments and then people react to it, and then I just don't want to dig into it. Wolf Fly Wheel 2525 Seahawks or Rams. I'm going to go Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are. I don't like the term team of destiny, but they just feel like they are a freight train right now, and I don't think that anybody's going to slow them down. They're my Super Bowl pick right now. Man, if Sam Darnold does that, good for him. Good for him. Tin Kim says, I better not see Troy Anderson and Braylon Trice on the roster. Well, Braylon Trice will be there. Troy Anderson will not be there. Troy Anderson's going to be moving on. He couldn't stay healthy. And Braylon Trice, again, can't stay healthy, but he has played all of 0 games. They shut him down very early in the season. They kind of played coy about it, but they shut him down early in the season. And then obviously he never came back. Maybe we see him next year. Well, I bet we see him in training camp and people might have a reaction then, but I just want him to stay healthy, dude. I just think he's a bigger body. He can help with run defense. I think that could be an option for him. I don't want to jump to too many conclusions with him though. Ultimately, that's just kind of where I stand on that. Here, I got time for 1 or 2 more questions. I'm going to try to get to some of them. And then we're going to put a bow on it. I've been going for about an hour now. That's a lot of talking. And I appreciate all of you guys for jumping in here. All the great questions, all the good comments. I do really appreciate it. King David 5525 says, I judge a coach by his coordinators. And here my puppy coming. I judge a quarterback. And he said, I judge a coach by his coordinators, and Zach was not the guy. Morris did great with defensive side and draft, but special teams and offensive coordinators were an issue. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with all of it. I mean, ultimately, Zach was his guy. He was not the guy, I guess you could say. And the defensive side of the ball it was great last year. And ultimately, that was their undoing. That was their undoing of the situation. But yeah, that's just kind of the situation that the Falcons find themselves in. But here's Jason comes out with the Fletcher Jr. That's actually a perfect example of somebody who I could see the Falcons going and getting in the draft. We'll see if they can actually do something with it. But again, that's kind of the direction I'm going. But big thank you to all of you. I mean, we did a full hour. Lots of great comments, lots of great questions, stuff like that. And I do appreciate you guys jumping into the show and giving some good comments and everything else. And make sure to do it again on Thursday, because we do this every single Tuesday and Thursday. We'll try to go as far into the off season as we can, but we got tons of stuff that is coming up. We might have an offensive coordinator. There's probably going to be a general manager announcement maybe over the next couple of days. We'll see what happens with that. But now that the top 2 candidates have hit the open market, their teams are out of the playoffs. Ian Cunningham, Josh Williams. But look, we'll see what happens with it. I'd imagine something's coming here over the next couple of days. But make sure to hit that like button. I mean, we got almost 200 people in the podcast right now. All the more reason to throw some likes out there. I really appreciate it. And also, big thank you here. Mike Harvey talking about Daniel Jones, Trenton Houston, saying the new era is here. Don't silence me. This isn't your daddy's Falcons. And then Mike Harvey talking about Malik Willis and Carson Beck in the 4th. Big thank you to you guys in those super chats. But my name is Garrett Chapman. Make sure to give me a follow at GChapATL. If there is breaking news, that's the best place to be up to date on all that stuff that does come out. But until next time, again, my name is Garrett Chapman on the Falcons Podcast and for Falcons on SI. We will see you again here very soon. But until then,